Okay, hey guys, this is Chamonix from Chamonix Films, and I am going to give you some tours of Lightroom. Some of my clients have started using it to edit their iPhone and DSLR photos on their own, and it's a nightmare, so let's get started. This is how we import. You come into Lightroom and it will pop up. You can click import down here, and then you choose your file source on the other side. So I'm going to just go into my own personal photos here, and then recently I worked with Alex, the Eternal Hostess, and I was at her house, and here are the photos we took. I'm going to check all of those and then click import. Now there's different ways to focus. You can look at the library here. If you want to see all of your photos in this grid form, you click the G as a shortcut and it will bring you here. If you want to look at multiple photos side by side, like to compare them, you highlight them by holding down, if you hold the control key, you can click on different random ones. If you hold down the shift key, it will collect all the photos that are in between the first photo you clicked and the second photo you clicked. Same thing going in reverse, it'll undo it. Once you've selected multiple photos, click the N. That's the shortcut to bring them up side by side. If you would like to see the photos and have them not in the software, but more like a way to view them on display, click the L, and it will give you, it'll make everything black. Click it again, it'll make it very black. So it's gray the first time, then black, and then it brings it back. So that's a way to get rid of all the distractions so you can really appreciate what you're looking at. Okay, when it's time to edit the photos, click D. All right, and I don't actually always remember what all these stand for, but I just remember G is like a grid, N is to compare them. Maybe we can remember that as like no, N is for no. I want to decide which one I don't want because I want to compare side by side. I don't know, I just made that up. L is you want to look at them in a fancy way. And D is to develop it. It's like old film, you're developing the film. We don't do that anymore, but we still use the same lingo. Oh, see here, I'm still in the L mode where I can see everything in a grid. So I want to get out of that. A couple times I click it. Okay, now the cool thing about this, all these photos were taken on my iPhone, and you can see there's a variety. Some are dark, some are light. So let's hop over to the develop mode. You can just click, but I like using those shortcuts. And here's a photo of me sitting at the table. Obviously it's too dark. So immediately go over to this right-hand bar. Everything you need for editing and customizing the edits is on the right-hand side. Over on the left are all the presets. Now some of them come with Lightroom. I generally think they're all shit and I don't use them. So I've gone online and I've spent money, but that's because I'm a photographer and I care. I have Mastin Labs and I have Visco Film. And I also have user presets. And this is actually a new Lightroom. I have a new computer, new Lightroom, so my own presets are not in here right now. I will import them later, but I do have these. If you decide to buy them online, you just go to these websites, you can search Lightroom presets, there's lots of free ones, lots of packages, people make them all the time to make money. You choose the ones you like, you download them, they range from $20 all the way up to $200 or more, depending on how professional and how diverse they come, because there's a huge variety. Like this Visco ones, they come with all of these. Look at these, there's just tons of them. And I like Visco the best because they are all film filters. So they've taken old film and they've found a way to make the digital photos have that same effect. And you can do some research online to learn how the different old films look. Generally, I find the Canon ones are a little bit warmer. The Fujis have kind of more of a green. The Nikons, a little bit more on the blue, and the Sony, I don't really know. So I tend to use the Canon ones a lot, just, I've gone in that direction. But play around with it. So if you do buy a set, then the way it would work is you could choose a preset, you click it, it applies to the photo, and then you move over here to the right side of the screen and start adjusting your custom settings. Now you don't have to use the presets. That's just usually a nice starting spot. When you use a preset, it's kind of like, here, this is gonna get it pretty close to what we want, and then we're gonna go tweak it. If you don't apply a preset, then you're working from scratch, and you gotta know that every adjustment you're making on the right-hand side is all you're gonna get. So if you look at this original photo, and if you wanna see the before and after when you're editing, click on the backslash button on your keyboard. It's in between the backspace and the enter buttons. It's so not a forward slash, a backslash. Hold it down and it brings up before and after. And that way you can kind of compare. Like this Kodak Gold preset I just applied made everything a little bit more contrast and darker, grainer, or a little bit greener. Like look up here at the ceiling, it's kind of creamy beige, and then it just got a little bit greener. So you can really, it's hard to tell when your photo's dark. It's easier when you've taken a photo that has good lighting. This is bad lighting. If you take a photo with good lighting, then your preset is more, nice, Alex, nice facial expressions. See, look, you apply this, that you can see more obviously what the preset has done because the original lighting was better. So using presets can be dangerous at first because you'll want to go crazy with them. It's really fun. Most people, when they start, they go overboard. My original photos are all over-processed, over-edited, and then over time we tend to all shift in the direction of minimal editing. How can you get away with doing the least amount possible to make it look more lifelike? Unless, of course, you're going for something that looks more styled and vintage or cool. Okay, so just that's a little rundown on presets. Now let's quickly zoom through the right-hand side here so you get a little tour. From the top, a histogram. This, you don't have to worry about it too much. It's kind of a tech geeky thing, but it's about the light and the color in the photos. So the left-hand side, as you can see, is blacks. It says it right here. And then on the right-hand side is whites. And the darker the photo, the histogram will show you that more of the photo is down at this end. If you have a very bright photo, it's going to show you the grid is going to be all up here. And you can darken the photo or brighten it by sliding, like clicking up here and sliding, saying, I want all of the things in the photo to be brighter. And you manually slide them up, see? Woo! Or you grab them and you're like, everything get darker, get darker. Ooh, everything is now too dark. So if everything is down right here on the left-hand side, that means your photo is black and you've lost all detail. So as a photographer, we care about this because you want your entire photo to never touch the left side or never touch the right, because if it's touching, anything touching there is gone. It's lost. It's completely black. It's completely white. There's no detail. So we're trying to keep it in the middle. And as long as your photo is originally in the middle, then you can tweak it. But if it's hitting, you can't save it. It's gone. So this is also showing you the colors that are present. Okay. That's a whole nother story. Let's move on. This here is cropping. You click it, you can make it big or small. If you look over here, this little lock symbol, and this will show you the different ratios of the photo. If you don't, if the lock is unlocked and you go to change the photo, you can do anything with it, and you might not like it. And oh, just like everything in the world, Control-Z is undo. And so I generally like to keep the photo the original ratio. I just want to make it smaller. So to do that, you can click the lock button, which means that it will always stay the same ratio. Or you can click Shift. The Shift key will keep it the same ratio. Now, if you'd like to change it from vertical to horizontal, then you pull and pull across. So you see, hold the Shift key, and then by pulling, instead of pulling it down to the left, which just makes it smaller, if I pull the mouse over to the right, it'll snap to be horizontal. Okay, so that's just how you're gonna organize. Oh, and last thing here, if you wanna rotate, you just hover on the outside and spin, and you see the little cursor becomes a turning arrow. Okay. This thing here is a spot removal tool. You click on one thing, and then it puts something else on top of it to hide it. So this is kind of like, I think of it as the pimple tool. If you look right now at Alex's phone, there's this little red dot right here on the back. Let's say that's a pimple and it's ugly and we want to get rid of it. Then you click on it, you'll see this little circle. You click what you want to get covered up. And then Lightroom, see the second circle appears and it grabs what's there and it sends it over and replaces it. And then you just click enter. And boom, the little dot is now gone. Now the only problem with that is that sometimes the direct copy and paste of one spot to the other doesn't match up. So then you're gonna have to drag it around. And I'll just quickly show you what that looks like. If this was taken from over here, like it's gonna take the top of the bottle and put the bottle there, and that won't match and we won't like it. If you click Control and the plus sign, it can zoom you in, and then you just click and drag to look around your photo. So yeah, that doesn't match up. It's not the same texture. So you click it, and then I'm going to drag it back to something that is the same texture, and then you try and line them up. So this is really helpful when you're getting rid of pimples, when there's a little spot in the photo, when you dropped food on your jacket and you need to clean it up. Like if her food here, she didn't want this little one at the bottom, then you'd click it and she could immediately remove it. See? The other cool tip here is that when you're working with this tool, use the brackets. The left bracket makes it smaller and the right bracket makes it bigger. And let me show you how that works. See, it gets smaller or it gets bigger, and that's the left and right brackets, which are just next to the backslash button. Okay, moving over. Red eye correction. I think that's obvious. I actually never use it. The gradient tool. This is only going to affect the part of the photo that you cover up with. See how you can spin it around and do all this cool stuff? Clicking delete will make it disappear. When you're clicking up here, okay, so there's all these presets on the right-hand side. That will adjust the whole photo. When you click on graduated filter up here, now all of these controls are only going to affect the area that the graduated filter is applied to. If you scroll down, you'll see these are the overall photos, like exposure to the overall photo, big, low, white, dark. Whereas up here, exposure, this is only for the area that we're going to select. So I'm going to apply the gradient to the top of the photo, and then we make it brighter, we make it darker, brighter, darker. This is helpful if you're taking a photo and the half of the photo is too bright and half of it is too dark. For example, in here, the bottom half of this photo, I'm in the dark, but the top half is right by the window, so it's too bright. So we're gonna, I don't wanna if I try to make my face brighter by just making the whole photo brighter, now I can see me, but everything back here has been lost. So rather than losing the whole photo, I'm just gonna take the gradient and come down here and drag up just the part that I want brighter, which is me, and just brighten that part. And voila, this is still intact at the top. Okay, moving on. The radial filter, also a little fancy. I don't use it that much. Let's move on. The adjustment brush. This is the same idea as the graduated filter, where you're just affecting one part of the photo, except you're painting where you want it specifically. So you see it's a brush. You can use the brackets to make it smaller or bigger. And this would be like if I only want to make my face brighter. So another shortcut is if you click the K button, that brings up the brush right here. The K button shows up. Let's make it really bright. I'm going to paint my face, just my face. Ew, that looks great. And then make it really dark, really bright, really dark. It's just that area. And you click done and move on. Now if you do something that you don't like, you just click K again or click on the brush and you'll see these little gray dots appear, and you can always go click on the gray dot and you can move it around. Like if, let's say, maybe make it really bright. You can move it around, or you just click delete and it's gone. Problem solved. Okay, so those are all the little fun features at the top. Now we move on to the basic category. This is basic editing. Color, if you click black and white, it will make your photo black and white. I never do that because if I want to use black and white, I'm generally doing a custom beautiful black and white preset. I don't just trust them to do black and white because that will just desaturate it and it will look kind of sick. So, okay, color, white balance. This is going to match with your camera as however you took the photo. You can also set it to auto, so Lightroom decides for you. Let's go find a photo that's like here, a photo in the nighttime. This is a funky thing about white balance. Auto, see, it turns it more blue because it's like, the room is kind of orange. I think you probably want it to be a little bit more neutral. Auto. Custom is going to let you customize temperature and stuff. So I generally just do as shot because I try and get it right in the camera the first time. You can also use this clicker button and click on something that's a pretty neutral color, and then the whole photo will adjust to that. So like in this situation, so you can also look over here on the left, it'll show you the preview. If you drag the picker around until you see the photo on the left looks how you want it. Let's make this bigger so it's more obvious. Okay, so you can click here and then it gets all blue, or it gets very cold. Generally we look for something that's neutral colored, so it's kind of a neutral, warm, happy color. Again though, don't worry about that too much because you are probably just gonna make all the changes down here. Temperature slider, very cold, very warm. This is a great way to fix problems when you've taken a photo in the dark and the photo is very orange light. You can bring that down the temperature a little bit. Also, if like you've taken a photo outside and it looks really cold, you can just add a little bit of warmth and it looks like the sun is shining. The tint, green to pink. And generally, humans look a little bit healthier when their skin is more pink or orange, or pink or red rather than green. So if it's a human photo, then I will usually just crank it up just a little bit, not a ton. Most of these settings, when we change them, we are not dragging them all the way to the top. Because you see these numbers on the side will tell you how far you've gone, and most of the time I make edits, it's like underneath 20. Negative 20 to 20, that's kind of the range you work in. And you're only going to the end if you're doing some real extreme editing because the photo really needed help. If you're doing it to those extreme ends, then you probably need to improve your photography because you're relying too much on editing. And if you're taking good photos, then you'll only need to do tiny tweaks to your edit. Okay, same thing now that we come to exposure. Brighter, darker, obvious, move on. Okay, contrast. This is gonna make it look more faded or more matte or kind of vintage because all of the difference between the darks and the lights are coming together closer. When you make the contrast increased, they go to the opposite extremes. Like I want the brights to be really bright and the darks to be really dark. I generally like to take photos that are a little bit more contrasty so that things pop, especially when I'm working with product photography because I want the light that's shining on the product to emphasize and then I want the background to be darker and fade away. Lower contrast is a little bit softer for humans. You don't see all the wrinkles and everything in their face. And let's use Alex as an example here. If I do high contrast, you'll see her skin will start to look all detailed and blotchy, and if we do lower contrast, the color kind of goes out, but it softens the skin a little bit. She doesn't look so, detailed skin issues there. Okay, so moving on to highlights. Same thing, this is gonna make them darker or brighter, but it's only affecting the parts of the photo that are bright already, the highlights, the bits that are most white. So that's where the light is bright in the window, the white colors. You also have a slider here that is just whites. Okay, so highlights and whites are both taking the parts of the photo that are brightest and they're making them brighter or darker. And this is really helpful if you like the dark parts of the photo to stay dark and rich, but you want the overall photo to just feel a little bit more poppy and vibrant, because if you just do exposure, it'll change if you lift the exposure, it'll make everything brighter, the darks and the lights. And sometimes we don't want the darks to get brighter, we just want the lights to be brighter. Okay, and then on that same note, but just the opposite, you have shadows and you have blacks. So that's gonna take just the dark parts down or up. And when you take them both down, and you bring both the highlights and the whites up, this is equivalent, kind of the same as doing high contrast, where you're making those two things move to their extremes. And if you do if you bring them down towards each other, they're getting more neutralized. If you increase the shadows and decrease the whites, you're starting to get the lower contrast look. And again, I'm taking these to the extremes, which never looks very good. So we usually play in that medium range. I'm a big fan of darkening blacks, increasing the blacks and darkening shadows, because you can start to take things in different directions. So it's like generally the photo is gonna be richer and deeper if the shadows are darker, but by lifting just the blacks, so not the grays, not the dark green, but just the black color, it means that as the whole photo gets a little bit darker, the black, which is the darkest part, doesn't get even darker. It's like, I want you all to get darker, but you, Mr. Darkest, you get a little bit brighter so that it kind of balances and doesn't your photo doesn't have like a sinkhole of darkness. Okay, clarity. This is just gonna make everything look sharper versus blurrier. But just like the contrast, when you go high clarity, you're gonna see every little pore on her skin. It doesn't usually look very good on people. Clarity is gonna be like too glowy in 1980s glamour, yuck. Okay, so I pump up the clarity just to about 10 at the max because I like things to be really punchy and to be really clear, especially working with things like products where I have a logo that I really want to stand out. Okay, then we're talking about vibrancy and saturation. The saturation is going to take the actual colors and make everything more colorful, or go black and white. The vibrance doesn't make the photo go black and white, it just takes the photos that are there and makes them stand out a little bit more or a little bit less. Because you can still see there's orange down here, it's just the orange is very desaturated. And whereas if you go the saturation down, there's no orange left in the photo at all. Okay. Now tone curves. So you can do everything kind of in the basic thing. Everything else is now getting a little bit fancier. Tone curves, I spend a lot of time here, and when you start doing this, it's going to increase your quality, kind of going to another level of photography. You're getting a little bit more nitpicky. It's still just the highlights and the lights and the darks and the shadows, same concept that we talked about before, but I find that this is a little bit more fine-tuned. And when you work down here, you're going to be able to see this curve, which again, everything on the left is dark and everything on the right is white. And so you can control the actual line and experiment by grabbing it and just dragging it up or dragging it down. And you see as you drag the line, the slider will also move. And you can start to pull things around like this and see how they all affect each other without, so you get the grid moving as a way to show you the kind of the ratio of how much light and how much dark do we have going on in the photo. Like if you come up to the top, then you're only adjusting those brightest parts. Okay, it's a little bit more scientific and mathematic, so just go there when you're ready and excited to play with that, but it's pretty fun. You can also use this here as in adjusting the tone curve. You click on this little dot, and then you click on something in the photo that is you're telling it, I want, whatever I click on, that is the thing that you're adjusting. So let's reset this, and I would say, the photo looks perfect, but the microwave is just too bright for me. And that's the only thing I really want to change. Anything that's in the photo that's the color of the microwave. So I grab it by clicking there, and then I hold down the button, and then I pull my mouse down or I pull my mouse up, like sliding the mouse on the keyboard up or down. And when you let go, you'll see it again. Same thing here, like let's click on the potatoes. You click there, you're gonna make everything that's that orange color brighter or darker. Or everything that's skin tone, click on that, drag it up, drag it down. It's only gonna be adjusting a certain section of color or lightness. That's a good place to start. Okay, now coming into this is where you're dealing with specific colors. So again, you're looking at specific parts of the photo. You can click on that dot to do that too. Like anything that I click on right now is going to be orange. So we're only adjusting the orange, and you'll see the sliding scales over here. The orange and the red got adjusted, but not down here. The blues didn't because I was clicking on a piece of orange vegetable. And anything else in the photo that is that same color, as you can see, the cabinets and her skin are similar to the orange, whereas the pumpkin is green. So if I change the pumpkin color, now anything that's similar to pumpkin is going to change, but nothing else will. Okay, so then these three things, the saturation is how much of that color is present. So if I don't want any orange, you just get rid of it by getting it down or up. If I want that pumpkin, like I don't want a green pumpkin, now the pumpkin will turn gray, or the pumpkin will be extra green. The hue is the color of it. So you could say, I want a lot of orange in the photo, but everything that's orange, I want it to be more red. Or I want it to be more orange, or see here, this is the orange slider. I want this, to the left is more orange, to the right is more yellow. Okay, so the pumpkin example, I want lots of green, which is that pumpkin there. I want lots of it. I don't want it to be black and white. I want it to be very colorful. But do I want the pumpkin to be more yellow, or do I want the pumpkin to be more blue? So when you're working with the hue, you're sliding the color on the color spectrum towards the color to its left or the color to its right. So yes, and then the luminance is how bright that color is going to be. So the pumpkin, if I want everything there green, is going to be very dark, or everything there is going to be very bright. Let's show it again with the orange. If it's orange, make it really bright. If it's orange, make it really dark. Cool? Okay, there are these other black and whites. You can do the different hues that when for example, turn the photo black and white, but if it's orange, now I want that to be brighter or darker. I don't usually play with that very much. I stay over here in HSL. I think it's the easiest and the clearest. Split toning. This is where you're specifically targeting, let's use a different picture, where you're specifically targeting the bright parts and the dark parts and changing those colors. So for here, the oven is white. So highlights, saying I'd like to add the color purple or the color red or the color or whatever, this color, and that's only going to the things in the photo that are that brightness. Similarly, you're saying I now for everything that's a shadow, I want to change the color of the shadows. And so then you can get kind of funky because you can say if it's a bright part of the photo, it's going to be yellow, and if it's a dark part of the photo, it's going to be purple. And then you start to get these kind of vintagey retro effects, kind of funky. And then the balance to the left or the right is how much are we focusing on the highlights or the shadows. Like I want the shadow bit to be really intense, different, but it's more subtle on the highlights. This is very creative and where people tend to go overboard. Okay, details. Sharpening, noise reduction. With lower quality cameras, you're gonna have things that are blurry and you're gonna have things that are grainy. Like you're gonna look at your photo and be like, it just looks kind of like there's dots all over it. The skin doesn't look so smooth. So if it looks like it's blurry, just increase the sharpening a little bit, but that will, just like the contrast, make you see all the skin details and stuff that might be a little intense. And then noise reduction, if the photo is really blurry, like for example, if you take a photo in the dark, this is usually where you're gonna find photos that get really blurry. So I'm gonna make it brighter with an increased exposure. But you see like up here, the photo is gonna get kind of around my face. There's a lot of noise, so that you're gonna come down here. I can make it sharper. Oh yeah, it takes each individual pixel and makes it sharper, not so cute. Noise reduction is gonna make all the pixels are gonna smooth together, but it's gonna make everything look kind of blurry. See? So no longer is it looking super grainy, but now it's looking super blurry. So you kind of have to decide for yourself, are you gonna use this at all? And if you do, how much do you add in before you kind of like, it just looks gross. Now, obviously there's the detail, the contrast, the color. You could experiment with how these affect everything, but I generally just keep it simple and just play with just the top sliders, yes or no. Okay, lens correction. I, for the most part, would not even bother with this area, but just so you know, what happens with when you take photos is photos get wonky with the lens and the light coming through, and then you can go in and try and adjust it. Okay, effects. Again, I just don't hang out here very often because it makes it look super cheesy. Those are the extremes. What you can do though, sometimes when you take a photo is it'll be a little dark on the edges and like naturally there's a natural vignette. This happens with like lower quality lenses or wider lenses. And then you can just add a little bit of the brightness to fill in those shadows. Now this photo doesn't have that problem. So when I add in the vignette, it makes a white circle around the outside. But imagine there was already a black circle there, then the white circle would bring it back to neutral and balance it out. Grain, just there we go. Now it looks like it's a grainy type of film. You can increase the size so that it gets bigger or smaller grain. And then how big and rough are those grains? Is it very smooth or are they big and chunky? And you can find your favorite ratio. I like adding grain into photos because I think it adds some texture that makes it look like a rich film. It's more artistic, but don't go crazy. I like it around 10 or less. So it's like a subtle little, there's something special about this photo, not a, what have you done to the photo? Camera calibration, similar issue as the lens correction. It's kind of geeky, don't worry about it. Okay, last thing here, there's some other things you can do. You can click here for the before and afters. You can also click all these different settings to have it split. So the left-hand side of the photo is the before and the right-hand side is the after. And top or bottom split. So that's useful if you're comparing what you've done and you want to see how much you've affected it. And then in terms of how to actually work with the photos and keep them organized in Lightroom, there's different ways you can do that, but down here in the bottom corner, there's filtering. Now, I like to use flags and star ratings. So generally what I do, let's say I've imported all these photos and I only want to choose my favorite ones that I'm going to use on the blog. So in that case, this is how I like to do it. I highlight all of them, click G to go to the grid, and then I click 5. So all of them now have 5 stars. And then I'm going to come down here to the rated, where you can do what stars do you want to see? And I'm going to click, I want to see everything that's a starred 5. And then I will go through and click a few photos, and then I click the N button so I can see them side to side. And then I'll choose my, I like to get rid of photos I don't like and be left with the ones I do. So I deduct. So I'll be like, okay, I don't need this photo of Alex, so I'll just click the number 4 and it will disappear because I'm only being shown photos that are 5. Now if I want to go find that photo, then I just click 4 equal to 4, and I'll see all the photos that I get rid of here in the 4 category. Okay, and then I bring up the photos, and now these side columns can take up space. So if you click tab, they'll disappear. Click tab again, they come back. So I'd be thinking I want the photos of food and the table and me at the table, and this one, between these two, I like the one on the right better. So I'm gonna click on this one, click 4, it's gone. And then I work pretty quickly, and you can also open up a whole bunch of them and then quickly zoom through and just go, no, 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 no. And it's really great when you've taken a bunch of photos that are similar and you can't decide to have them side by side like that. Okay, and then now I'm left with the ones that left with number 5 on them. Okay, and then from here, if that's enough and I'm happy, that's great. But if I want to do like a second cull, like it's a tournament, like these are my favorites, but now I need to just choose out my very, very, very favorites, then I might say, I'm going to now go through and just click, if it's my favorite, I'll put a 3 on it. You can come up with any system that works with you, for you, but I'll be like, I really like this one. I like this one of me. I like this one of the table. I like this one of us talking and her shooting, and then us there. And then I go to the 3s, and they're my very favorite ones. Okay. Now, if I want to edit these together, I click on the D, and that takes us to the develop setting. And if you want them all to match, and if you've done a good job taking photos that are consistent, they're all similar lighting, then it's very simple because you just edit the first one, put a filter on it, say like, yeah, get a little brighter, I'm just fiddling around. Like, I want you to look like this. I think that's beautiful. Make sure they're all selected down here at the bottom, and then click sync. You choose which settings you want. All of these here are just the settings that are over on this column. See, white balance is that top thing, then the basic tone is here, then the tone curve, then the sharpening and the color, and you just choose. And then you say synchronize, and it's going to make all of these have the same editing effect on them. Then you can always go in and just be like, okay, well, you know, that was great for that. Click the tab, and I click export. And then from here, you choose where you're going to save them. So just like the rest of your computer, choose a folder. Like I'll just say desktop. Select the folder, and then put it into the subfolder, demo photos. And then I like to rename all my files with a custom name and a sequence. So I usually say Chamonix Films dash client name dash project name, and then the month and the year that we did the project. This way, all of my files have the same system, so I know how to find it. I'll be like, oh, it's a photo taken for Chamonix Films for the Eternal Hostess kitchen tutorial in September of 2017. And this is a fantastic way for me to organize thousands and thousands of photos. And then the sequence number here starts at 1, and they all stay chronological. Now you come down here, you want to make sure your photos are all the top quality, unless you want them smaller on purpose. And that's the only thing I click. And then I click export. And you'll see up here that they export to the desktop. Now, these are all going to be high quality because I didn't change the quality, so I would upload them to my online gallery or wherever. But if I'm going to put them on my blog and I want them to be smaller for the web, you can do the same thing. Export. Everything is great, but then I'd come in here and I would just have a little note to myself that in the client, in the file name, it's like these are web sized or whatever you want to call it. And then come down here, and my favorite way to change for the web is resize to fit, and then I just change the long edge. So So whether it's horizontal, it's the bottom, or vertical, which is the side, I want it to be. And then I usually set like 1500, that's pretty good. And like the resolution for the internet is usually 72 pixels, but make up your own mind here, whatever you want, what's gonna work for you, but that's good for me usually. And then export. Some people like to add a watermark. You can go in and edit and like say Chamonix Films, and then you see that appears down here, and you could make it bigger, or you could use an actual image like a logo. I don't like doing this. I actually use a program called Blog Stomp to do all of my watermarking if I want to do that later. Okay, all these other things, map, book, slideshow, print, web, they do cool things. You can use them if you want to, but this is just a basic Lightroom tutorial. I never actually use them because I've got other things in life to do. I just need to organize them in the library with the stars, and then I need to edit them in the develop, and then I export them. And we're done. If you do use Photoshop, you want to like do extra work, like if I'm like, oh man, I've got zits all over my face and I want to edit them out, and this tool that we talked about earlier just isn't doing the trick, and you need to do something more intense, you can right click on these photos and it gives you all these options, and you can say edit in Photoshop, and it will, this is the beauty of using Adobe software, is they're all a family. So Lightroom will just take this photo and send it over to the other application. You do your edits in Photoshop, and then it will send it right back here to Lightroom. It's a pretty cool thing. I use it a lot. And you can also click virtual copy if you want to have two photos but edited differently. And this is how I handle black and whites. I make a copy, and then I know I don't do this, black and white, right? I usually come over here and find a black and white setting of a preset that is a little bit more attractive. And then you can click them, click N, and they'll come up side by side, and you'll see your two versions. So voila! If you have any questions or want more in-depth explanations of anything else that you can do here, let me know. I'm happy to answer your questions. Again, I'm Chamonix from Chamonix Films. ChamonixFilms.com is where you can find me, and please subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can get more tips. And featured in these photos was the Eternal Hostess. Alex, the Eternal Hostess, she has an amazing food and entertainment blog where she helps bring people together in community over food. And these photos were taken because I was giving her a full day tutorial on how to take better pictures for her blog. So go check her out too, at Eternal Hostess on Instagram, or The Eternal Hostess everywhere else. All right, see you later. Thanks.